You think you know this date. July 14th. A monarchy falls, a fortress is stormed, a republic is born, and you only know half the story. Bastille Day, 1789. A Paris crowd storms the fortress prison called the Bastille, and Europe's most powerful monarchy is suddenly living on borrowed time. Ever since, July 14th has meant one thing: the day the people tore down a throne. But France isn't the only monarchy that fell on a July 14th. Exactly 169 years later, same date, a different palace, soldiers surround a royal family in Baghdad, and in a single morning, an entire kingdom the British had built simply ends. You were taught the French one. You were almost certainly never taught this one, and it helped make the modern Middle East. It's the July 14th that never got a holiday, and hiding at the end of it is a name you'll recognize the instant I say it. To understand why soldiers surrounded that palace, you have to know where it came from. The Iraqi monarchy wasn't ancient. It was younger than some of the people living under it. Iraq, as a country, was drawn up in London. After the First World War, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and Britain stitched three of its provinces, Basra, Baghdad, and Mosul, into one new territory under a League of Nations mandate. Britain wanted a king to run it, and there was no Iraqi throne to fill. So in 1921, they imported one. The man they chose was Faisal, a Hashemite prince from the Arabian Peninsula, just thrown out of Syria by the French. The British ran a referendum that handed him 96% of the vote, the kind of number that isn't really a vote, and crowned him Faisal I, King of Iraq. A king from somewhere else, on a throne that hadn't existed, over borders drawn in Europe. That's the kingdom we're watching fall. Underneath the crown sat the real bargain. Britain kept its bases, its influence, and a grip on Iraq's oil, which flowed out through a British-run company, mostly into British pockets. One man kept that arrangement running for 30 years. Nouri al-Said, Ottoman officer, British confidant, took the Prime Minister's office 14 times by most counts. He'd resign, wait, and take it back. When one man holds an office that often, you don't have a democracy, you have a manager, and the British held the account. Then a voice on the radio began undoing him. Egypt's president, Gamal Abdel Nasser, preached Arab nationalism. Arabs should unite in answer to no empire. And in 1956, he stared down Britain, France, and Israel at Suez and came out a hero. Nouri banned the broadcasts. Iraqis listened anyway, in cafes, with the volume down. Next to the man from Cairo, the man still shaking hands with London looked like a relic, a collaborator. Then, in February 1958, Nasser moved the map. Egypt and Syria merged into one country, the United Arab Republic, the first brick in his dream of a single Arab state. Nouri's answer took 2 weeks: a rival union with Jordan, the last Hashemite throne next door, ruled by young King Faisal's cousin. 2 Arab unions, a republic of the people, and a hasty federation of the last 2 kings. Everyone could feel which way history leaned. Inside the Iraqi army, a secret had been growing. Modeled on the officers who'd overthrown Egypt's king in 1952, a clandestine network, the Free Officers, had spread through the ranks. Soldiers who wanted the monarchy gone, the British out, and Iraq run by Iraqis. At its center were 2 very different men, about to run the country: Brigadier Abd al-Karim Qasim and Colonel Abd al-Salam Arif. The name I promised you isn't in this room. Not yet. They'd been waiting for an opening. In July 1958, the monarchy handed them one. There was unrest in Lebanon, and King Hussein of Jordan, nervous his own throne might be next, asked for Iraqi troops to prop him up. The monarchy agreed and ordered army units west toward Jordan. Those orders sent armed, mobilized soldiers on a route straight through Baghdad. If the army was already moving, why not march it at the palace instead? In the pre-dawn dark of July 14th, 1958, Colonel Arif turned his column into the capital. His men seized the bridges, the ministries, and, the real prize, the radio station. And around 6:30 that morning, Iraqis switching on their radios heard an unfamiliar voice announce that the monarchy was finished. The army, the voice said, had freed the country from a corrupt crown propped up by imperialism. A republic was declared. People poured into the streets, not to defend the king, but to celebrate that he was gone. But the royal family was still inside the Rehab Palace. What happened next is the hardest part of this story, so I'll tell it plainly. Soldiers surrounded the Rehab Palace, the royal residence in Baghdad. The young king, Faisal II, 23 years old, was inside, along with the crown prince, several princesses, and the household servants. They were told to come down into the courtyard. None of them walked back out. The king, his uncle, the women of the household. In minutes, the monarchy Britain built in 1921 ceased to exist, and Iraq would never have a king again. The Prime Minister, Nouri al-Said, slipped away into hiding, by one widely told account, disguised in a woman's cloak to get past the checkpoints. It didn't hold. The next day, July 15th, he was recognized on the street, and the man who'd held the whole British arrangement together for 30 years did not survive the crowd. The crowds were not gentle with the old regime. So who were the men who pulled this off? And what did they do with the country once they had it? Start with the one who came out on top. Abd al-Karim Qasim was a career soldier, the son of a carpenter, part Sunni, part Shia, and famous for caring about neither. He was austere to the point of severe, no family, little interest in money, sleeping in his office at the Ministry of Defense. His supporters called him Az-Zaim, the sole leader. He believed in an Iraq for all Iraqis, Arab and Kurd, Sunni and Shia, and he would not hand his country over to anyone, not even Nasser. And that's where his partner comes in, Colonel Abdas Salam Arif, the officer who had stormed Baghdad and read the revolution over the radio. Arif was everything Qasim wasn't: charismatic, emotional, a true believer in Nasser. To Arif, the whole point of the revolution was to fold Iraq into Nasser's United Arab Republic. To Qasim, that meant trading one master for another. Within weeks, the two heroes of July 14th were rivals. Qasim stripped Arif of his posts, and when Arif was later accused of plotting, he was arrested, condemned, and then, at the last moment, spared by Qasim himself. The revolution wasn't even a year old, and already it was turning on the people who'd made it. It's worth stopping on the young man who lost the most. Faisal II became king as a small child, after his father passed away in a car accident, and grew up under an uncle's regency, schooled in England at Harrow. He was quiet, reportedly in fragile health, and, the detail that lingers, engaged to be married. A mild, unthreatening young man who'd inherited a throne he never chose, built by an empire he didn't create. And he paid for all of it on a July morning. The fury wasn't aimed at him. It fell on two other men. His uncle, the former regent Abdalillah, seen as Britain's puppet, and Nouri al-Said, the manager of it all. Those two were the face of 30 years of foreign control, and when the monarchy fell, a generation's anger came down on them. And here's the name I promised you. Among the young hotheads who came to hate Qasim for refusing to unite with Nasser was a 20-something street thug from a village near Tikrit. In 1959, he joined a botched attempt on Qasim's life in the middle of Baghdad. It failed, and he fled the country, wounded in the leg. His name was Saddam Hussein. July 14th didn't only end a monarchy. It opened a door, and you already know who walked through it. If this is the history class you were never given, take a second to subscribe before we walk through that door together. Qasim Zarraq moved fast. He pulled Iraq out of the Western military alliance, legalized opposition parties, and passed a land reform law that broke up the estates of the old elite. He also went after the British-run oil company that controlled Iraq's wealth for decades. In 1960, Baghdad hosted the meeting that created OPEC, the cartel that still moves the price of energy on your street today. The country Britain built to keep the oil flowing its way had just helped invent the club designed to take that power back. In 1961, Qasim made a move that echoes loudly now. When Kuwait became independent, he declared it rightfully part of Iraq and threatened to take it. Nothing came of it then. British troops returned and the crisis passed. But hold that thought. An Iraqi strongman claiming Kuwait as a lost province. 30 years later, a different Iraqi strongman would act on that exact claim, and the world would go to war over it. Because July 14th set a pattern, and the pattern was blood. Qasim had taken power by force, and in 1963 he lost it the same way. Another coup, this one backed by the Ba'ath Party, and after a quick sham trial, Qasim was unalived on television for the country to see. Arif took over, then was pushed aside, and in 1968 the Ba'ath Party seized power for good. Rising through its ranks was the same young man who'd once fled Baghdad wounded. And in 1979, Saddam Hussein took the presidency. The line from the palace courtyard in 1958 to Saddam's Iraq is almost straight. And Saddam's Iraq is the one the modern world collided with. The 8-year war with Iran, the 1990 invasion of Kuwait, that old claim revived, the Gulf War, the sanctions, and finally the 2003 invasion that pulled the United States into a conflict it's still reckoning with. Every one of those chapters traces back, one coup at a time, to the morning the monarchy fell. So here's where the two July 14ths leave us. Both began the same way. A resented throne, a surrounded fortress, a crowd that had finally had enough, and a morning that ended with a monarchy gone and a republic declared. The difference is only in the remembering. France turned its July 14th into fireworks and a national holiday. Iraq's became something harder, a beginning that never quite delivered the freedom it promised, and a warning about what rushes in when a crown comes down and nothing steady is ready to take its place. You were taught to remember the Bastille. Maybe it's worth remembering the palace, too. Same date, same story of a monarchy falling. Two very different endings, and one of them still shapes the headlines today.